This is Giadroich of the Cross, proclaiming the fullness of truth with clarity and charity.
Heard around the world on your Android and Apple mobile devices.
The simple truth, rising up to explore the difficult topics of real life. Join us as we proclaim the good, the true, and the beautiful with the simple truth of Jesus Christ and His Holy Catholic Church through Scripture, tradition, and the Catechism. And now, your host, Jim Higgins.
Happy Easter, Alleluia. Great to be back with you on The Simple Truth. We consecrate everything to the Sacred Heart of Jesus through the Immaculate Heart of Mary and the pure, strong heart of Saint Joseph. Today is Testimony Tuesday, where we bring you real, live, first-hand testimonial accounts of the life-giving reality of Jesus and His Catholic Church. Our guest today is Allison Ricciardi, founder and president of CatholicTherapist.com, a nationwide network of dedicated Catholic therapists and the #1 most trusted online resource for those seeking help from an authentic Catholic perspective. If you go there, CatholicTherapist.com, by the way, you're going to be able to find a free resource there, what every Catholic should know before starting therapy. Allison is also the director for the Raphael Remedy, which provides counseling and life coaches for a variety of issues. You can go there, theraphaelremedy.com, and there's a free ebook there as well for you, 8 Keys to Emotional and Spiritual Freedom, when you join the Raphael Remedy mailing list. And finally, Allison's also launching CatholicLifeCoaches.com soon. You can go there now and pre-register for more information, CatholicLifeCoaches.com. But Allison, it is a great blessing to have you with us to share some of your testimony today. How are you today?
It's great. Doing great today. I appreciate you inviting me.
Excellent. Well, thank you for being here. And we always start at the beginning. So tell us a bit about childhood. What was your early life like? Your family, the culture you grew up in. How did it all begin for you?
Well, I grew up in Hicksville, Long Island, where Billy Joel is from. And my family we were Catholic. My sister and I got sent to catechism, but our parents didn't really go. I think they were sincerely intentioned, but they never really learned their faith either. So we just had to go until confirmation, then we were out of there, which was in 5th grade when I received confirmation. So after that, I was out of there. And yet I was always searching. I was always thinking about God and trying to understand it. Now, my aunt, my mother's sister, who was my godmother, my Aunt Marion, just was amazing. And she had joined the Charismatic Renewal in the Catholic Church. And she was just on fire for Jesus. And then she wound up leaving and going to the Assembly of God. Now, my father, who didn't go to church very often, he would have these debates with my aunt and kind of like would defend the Catholic position as like the primacy of the church, not even realizing why. So, it was so interesting because my aunt really put Jesus, the person of Jesus, on the map for me, that made me really think about who is this Jesus and what is this faith all about. But, hearing my father kind of play with my aunt on that, he even went as far, he saw an ad in the newspaper for $5 he could become an ordained minister. So he sent away just to show my aunt, anybody could do this, there's the church. So as a teenager, and I wasn't living a very Catholic life, I was going to church, didn't really understand what I was doing. Most of the time I stood in the back because I didn't want to commit too much, But when we got to the point of the creed where we'd say, I believe in one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, I would stop. I wouldn't say it because I really didn't know. I really needed to know what the differences were. And I remember one time my girlfriends and I actually cut classes to go check out different churches. A real wild thing here. So, because I was curious. I really didn't understand the differences. And the problem was none of my friends understood the faith either. So you'd have your questions about it, and you'd ask other people who were just as ignorant as you were. And, we didn't understand things, certain church teachings, contraception and stuff that didn't seem to really make a lot of sense, but I didn't give it a lot of thought. But I met a couple when I started working, and they sponsored me into Amway. And as odd as that sounds as part of your faith journey, it was a very Christian-based company. And we'd go away for weekends and they'd have these non-denominational services. But this couple, we'd always leave and go to Mass. And the husband, Peter, really knew the faith. So I could start actually asking somebody questions about the faith. So little time went by, and the wife, Peggy, read a book by Father John Powell, Abortion, the Silent Holocaust. And she gave it to me, and it just blew my mind what was going on. I knew about abortion. I wasn't really, giving it much thought. But that book made such an impact on me, and I realized, I got to do something. So I actually went to my parish, because where do you start? If you want to, get involved, go to church. So there was a particular priest there who always gave these wonderful homilies, love and brotherhood and stuff. So I sat down with him, and I'm like, I got to do something. And we wound up having a conversation where he said to me, Allison, we don't really need to change the law. Most of the girls getting abortions are Catholic at the hospital here. And I just got furious. I said, well, why not? You're not talking about it in church. I was really angry. He wound up leaving the priesthood later on, which is not actually surprising. But he put me in touch with the head of the pro-life in the diocese, Monsignor James Lasanti, who was amazing, who put me in touch with this older man, Ray Murphy, 70 years old, a retired teacher, and he was going to the schools and colleges doing pro-life presentations. So he invited me to go with him to talk to an 8th grade confirmation class. And I'm like, well, I'll go, Ray, but I'm not talking. Like, don't ask me to say anything. And I could just kind of read their minds. I saw they had questions and things like that. So, of course, I said, Ray, can I just say something? And then that was it. It just kind of took off after that. But I didn't still understand my faith very well. But I was so impressed with the fact that the Catholic Church had such a strong teaching on life and had been consistent, whereas a lot of other churches started falling away on that. So at one presentation, the question of contraception came up, and Ray, talked about the church position. I didn't agree at that time because it seemed logical to me that if you had more contraception, we wouldn't need abortion. Not really logical after all, but I respected Ray, and I wasn't about to contradict him publicly. So I started really learning, and being able to kind of really learn these questions and then kind of make them my own. And you started seeing the real wisdom of the church and the psychology behind this whole mentality of abortion and contraception, which was really pivotal. Now, I didn't mention I had gone to school and gotten my degree in psychology. And even though I wasn't very devout at the time, I walked away because they left God out. So I couldn't really understand how you could really heal people without God. I mean, we can kind of figure things out and have certain techniques, but it kind of was, it didn't make sense to me. And also some of my professors were just weird. They are in psychology. And I had one professor, he was a very nice man. And I was involved doing research with him. And the research was, I had the first DVR on the block that I got from school, and I had to tape record shows that would show how the reason that girls do girl things and boys do boy things is because that's how they're portrayed on television, which was kind of ridiculous, because television had only been around a short time. So what happened before that? And this man, he actually adopted 2 children and was deliberately giving the boy girls things and the girl boys things to prove that there was no difference. That was the kind of thing that I looked at and I'm like, this is just insane. Again, very nice man, but this just didn't make a lot of sense to me. So, so I didn't really get involved. I wound up doing other things. I was in commercial real estate. I stayed in Amway for a while and things like that. But, I was searching. So I got involved, going to the schools and the colleges. And what I started seeing was the victims. I started seeing the young girls that we were too late for. And I will never forget one young girl, 16 years old. She said out loud, she said, I want to say something and I don't want it to go outside this room. And I thought, oh, please don't say it because it'll be all over the school. And she got up and she said, she's 16 years old. She had an abortion at 6 months pregnant. She can't forgive herself. She was just devastated. So, God was priming me to kind of really understand the plight of the woman and how sad, kind of really how manipulated women are in this. And even though, I wasn't really raised very Catholic, I always rejected feminism. I always saw it for the evil that it's really revealed itself to be. So, I'm looking at this. So God kind of called me back. I had an opportunity, somebody contacted me about doing a debate at a college in New York City. And it never really materialized, but we got into a conversation. I said, I have my degree in psychology. And he says, you have to meet my wife, because they were running a crisis pregnancy center and doing counseling. So I made an appointment to meet them, and I canceled the appointment. I rescheduled it because I didn't want to go to the Bronx. so I'm very shallow. Didn't want to go to the Bronx. So I canceled it. I wound up meeting them at a fundraiser. And now that they have faces, I can't cancel the next appointment. So I went and I started working there. And it was a very Catholic model. And I really, really learned how to integrate the faith and how important it was, because only God can heal people. That's the only thing that really, really matters. So after that, I stayed there. There was a bit of a falling out. I wound up going out on my own. And I had the great honor of being on Mother Angelica's show. I think it was 1995, talking about post-abortion syndrome.
Allison, let's actually pause there. We're going to have a hard break in just a minute, and that'd be a great place to pick up after the break. But just to clarify a little bit, how old were you about this time when you started working in that area before the Mother Angelica interview? About what age?
I started counseling at 30.
At 30, okay.
I guess I needed that life experience. I needed to see things. I was in sales, which is really good training also for counseling. So, God had me wait.
Okay.
God likes to make me wait.
Yeah, and that time in between, so you went to school for psychology early 20s, and then you said you walked away for a bit. Was that, did you not finish your degree at that point, but finished it a little bit later?
Later, yeah. And
Later
I just, I did sales, I did other things, but it was such a secular field at that point.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. It sounds like the Lord was helping you to knit a whole lot together that was going on in your heart and mind, preparing you for so much, which was to come. We're going to get into that. So much that is so good here. Obviously, always on holy ground when we're hearing these stories. And when we get right back, we're going to hear more from Allison Ricciardi, including that interview with Mother Angelica. You want to stay tuned for that. We'll be right back on This Simple Truth.
Here at the Station of the Cross, we proudly bring the truths of the Catholic faith to countless listeners through radio and mobile devices, and we're grateful for the feedback we've received.
I discovered the Station of the Cross rather providentially a year ago and have been a loyal listener ever since. I can't overestimate the value of the station, what it's made a difference in my life in terms of making me better informed Catholic. It has enriched my faith, consoled me during tough times, and made me laugh on several occasions. I commend the important work of this great apostolate.
I'm a stay-at-home mom. I listen to the radio, and if I can listen to something that brings me closer to God, closer to Jesus Christ, then it's the most beautiful thing.
If you've been blessed by listening to the Station of the Cross, let us know. Call 1-877-888-6279, extension 112. Then share your testimonial with us.
Did you know that by 12 weeks of development, a fetus's arms have grown enough to reach their final proportion relative to body size? Also, at this stage of growth, the entire body surface of the fetus, except the top of the head and back, will react to a light touch. This stage also marks the end of the first trimester of the constantly growing fetus. Human life is sacred. Think about it. CoalitionForLife.com.
We offer several ways to view our programming grid, including at our website, thestationofthecross.com, and on our iCatholic Radio app. Just click the menu icon in the top left portion of our app and select the link to our programming grid. That's at thestationofthecross.com and on our free iCatholic Radio app for Android and Apple mobile devices.
Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here. It is Testimony Tuesday, and our guest today is Allison Ricciardi, founder and president of CatholicTherapist.com, also director of the Raphael Remedy. You can go to theraphaelremedy.com, and also launching CatholicLifeCoaches.com soon. You can pre-register now. More information there at CatholicLifeCoaches.com. All right, Allison, that interview with Mother Angelica, real quick before you tell us about that story. So you were early 30s studies, counseling, and then at this point, just so we're clear, was the Catholic faith, was it starting to connect? Was it starting to come alive? Were you starting to understand it was the treasure not just of Jesus, yes, the great treasure of Jesus, but that he also instituted the Catholic Church for us. So it's really the treasure of Jesus and his Catholic Church. Was that beginning to all knit together before this interview?
Big time, big time. Again, having other people, like being in the pro-life movement was one of the greatest blessings because it put me around a lot of devout Catholic people who knew their faith. And even though I was out there speaking on pro-life and I kind of got to be well known on the island, Long Island, we call it the island, I didn't know my faith. I didn't learn. I did not remember learning the Rosary when I was in catechism. My friend who lived one house away somehow was in a different class than I was, and she had a nun. We were just like right after Vatican II. So she had a nun teaching. I had a layperson. I do remember the teacher telling us that if you die and call out to Jesus, you will be saved. And again, that couldn't be more important to know. That was that made a big, big impression on me. But I still didn't know like the mechanics of this faith. I didn't know the Rosary. My girlfriend would talk about making an act of contrition. I thought it was one word. I tried looking it up. I didn't know what it was. So now being in the pro-life movement, I was at like some sort of rally or something, and there was a table and there was a card on how to pray the Rosary. So I kind of took it and kind of stuck it in my purse because I didn't want anybody to know I didn't know this. I really was just totally ignorant. I had gone on the March for Life and somebody said, okay, who wants to lead the Rosary? And my girlfriend and I were both like, oh God, don't pick us. We don't know this. So, I taught myself. I actually went to a Protestant store in town who did have like maybe 3 sets of rosary beads. I bought these ugly black ones. There were so many pretty ones I didn't know. And I taught myself the Rosary. And the other thing that happened along that time, when I was doing research and pro-life work, I found Fulton Sheen. And I found his book, The World's First Love. And it was, I don't know if you've read it or not, but it's so beautiful about the Blessed Mother. And it really, the beauty of femininity. And I was very blessed because my mom was super feminine and always talked about being a lady. She taught me to be a lady. Ladies don't sit like that. Ladies don't talk like that. Ladies don't smoke. So it was very important to me to be a lady. So seeing this beautiful book and, it was life-changing. And the funny thing was, I really wanted to keep it. It was out of print at the time. It's back in print now, so I recommend it. Everybody read it. But it was out of print, so I thought about keeping it and telling the library I lost it, but I thought, that wouldn't be right. So I wound up bringing it back. Next time I go to take it out, they had sold it. So I went on this odyssey. I kept telling clients about it, and they'd all come up with like copies at used bookstores, and I didn't have any. And all of a sudden, like 5 people gave me copies of it. It was just treasured it. So listening to Fulton Sheen on the meaning of suffering and the power of the Rosary were absolutely life-changing for me. And also I read his book, Peace of Soul. And that was a book I think he wrote in the 50s in response to a psychologist who wrote a book, Peace of Mind. So that was very pivotal, like the essential nature of confession, the psychological benefits of confession, and certainly the spiritual, that, we can confess all we want, but we need that grace. We get that sacramental grace. So Fulton Sheen was really, really forming me, and it became really, really important to me. So by the time I had gone on Mother Angelica, what had happened a couple of years before, Mother had been on Long Island, and they wanted a female reporter for the Bishops' Conference. And Deacon Bill Steltemeyer asked a friend of mine, do you know anybody with media experience? So they recommended me. Never did anything like that before. It was not a great experience because you saw all the politics in the church. It was really kind of ugly and everything. But through that, I don't remember who I spoke to, but he said, tell Mother, you got to write to Mother Angelica and say you want to do the show. And of course they did. So it was really, it was really important because I think we really need to reach out to women who are hurting. It's so easy to appear judgmental about abortion, but the tragedy of abortion is that there's 2 victims. There's 3 victims, the father too. So being on Mother's show, I started getting phone calls like, do you know of a Catholic therapist near me? And, just because you're Catholic and a therapist doesn't make you a Catholic therapist, in my view. Catholic, as we know, is no longer a descriptive term, right? So I realized like there's a real need for this. And I had like a short list of people that I knew. We had a little group going in New York of Catholic therapists that we would talk. So I put together CatholicTherapist.com, and I was like completely outside of anything I'd ever done before. I didn't even have the language to build a website. I didn't know the word hyperlink. I was talking about blue click-ons and stuff, but I felt like it was really needed. And what I started doing, I wanted to make sure that the people on there were really Catholic. So, I have them like agreeing to church teaching on the site, so that we know that somebody coming there can be secure about that. And I'm happy to say we're celebrating 20 years online in July, so it's been really a great thing and really something I'm really happy about. But I want to just kind of like back up on a more personal level.
Sure.
As much as like God put these things in my path to do, I never wanted to do any of them. The only goal I had in life, literally the only goal, was to get married and have a lot of kids. I wanted a big family. I wanted to get married at 20, have my first baby at 22. I had it all planned out, but it didn't happen. And everything I did, that was the only thing I wanted. It was the only thing that actually even I valued. I didn't go for my PhD because I figured I'll be 29 and just want to get married and have kids. Like, why would I waste the time and the money on that, right? So, I kept praying about it, but there were a lot of heartbreaks along the way. There were a lot of things. And everything that was put before me to do, like, was pro-life work. And I got very involved, going to the schools and stuff. And it was always with, all right, God, I'll do this. Then can I get married and have kids? And then when I started counseling, all right, Lord, I'll do this. Then can I get married and have kids? And then when I started Catholic Therapist, it's like, all right. Then can I get married and have kids? It was just like, ridiculous. It was like, I just kept praying and praying and praying. It was just, there was a lot of heartache. And I think for single Catholics, and particularly Catholic women, it's very difficult because the church is really geared toward families and geared toward couples. And here I was, a therapist, I was a marriage counselor, I was helping all these couples to have better relationships, and they went on and had all these children. And I'd always sit there, I felt like Dorothy at the end of The Wizard of Oz, that, wow, there's nothing in the black bag for me. So it was a tremendous suffering. But along the way, I remember when I was in commercial real estate, I used to do office leasing, and I was about 26, 27 at the time, and there was a girl in the office who was single. She was 33 and single, and dating one of the guys in the office. And to me, that was a fate worse than death. I was horrified, and I just prayed, oh God, don't let that be me, So, well, I met somebody when I was 32, and we were going to get married. It was wonderful. And then he just literally broke my heart in a million pieces. And it was one of those things that Fulton Sheen talked about, that he said that if you ever doubt that prayers are answered, just ask God for suffering. And this guy was like, really, he was going through a lot. He was coming into the faith, or almost coming into the faith. And I said that prayer, oh God, let me suffer for him. And it was swift. And it was intense, and it went on like 8 years. It was really, really super painful. But during that time, I was still, I was counseling, I was doing all these different things and running Catholic therapists and everything. But God intervened in strange ways, like with different books. And I think that, spiritual reading was a really important part of my formation, especially not having had the faith growing up other than catechism. We went to public schools throughout. I never went to Catholic school. And I'm thankful, because everybody I know who went to Catholic school don't have their faith. I've often joked that the greatest defense against Catholicism has been Catholic education in this country, unfortunately, And I'm not saying everybody, but unfortunately, there's, they've kind of fallen off there. So when I was going through this really, really difficult time, I'd ordered a bunch of books from TAN publishers, and one of them, Trustful Surrender to Divine Providence, which was just, I read it 13 times. It's held together with a rubber band now. It's just a beautiful book. And I just really needed that. I was really struggling. But there was a book that TAN publishers sent, and it was called Devotion for the Dying by Mother Mary Potter. And honestly, I looked at it, I thought, oh, I'm sure that's really important, but God, I got my own problems right now, and I just ignored it. And one day in my desperation, I said, oh, let me look at this. And oh my God, this book just saved me. It was so beautiful. It was about offering all of your sufferings for dying sinners. that to snatch the prey of the devil out of his hands at that last moment, like somebody who'd been in his court their whole life. And that just gave so much meaning to the suffering that I was going through that it made it bearable. And I think this is something that I find really important, like even in my work as a therapist, and many other Catholic therapists will tell you that in the pain, in the suffering, is that opening for God. And I think that's why, as therapists, we have such an opportunity to teach people how to really apply the truth of our faith, the sacraments, the grace, the love of Jesus in those wounds. It's so incredibly powerful. So, like I said, I suffered for 8 years. I was 32 at the time. So do the math. I'm turning 40 and I'm still not married. And it was really, really tough. And the day before my 40th birthday, my little cousin, my cousin's daughter, got married. So talk about like, wow, really, really tough, you know? So, but I kept praying. And, there were times where I said, all right, Lord, if you don't want this for me, just take the desire away from me. But that wasn't happening. So I just, I had a spiritual director, and, I'd always say, like, did I miss the novena? It's like, what am I doing wrong? What is it that I'm supposed to be doing? What is the perfect prayer? There's got to be some magic bullet formula here. And, but time was going by and I was continuing to do what I was doing. But, it was always that desire on my heart. I remember when I was 40, I met somebody who's a good friend of mine now. She was 43 at the time. And she just said to me, she goes, well, I'm 43. I'm not married. I've accepted it. And everything in me was like, I'm not accepting it. I can't accept that. So, so I persevered. I kept doing what I was supposed to be doing. And, every time, okay, Lord, then can I get married and all that kind of stuff. And a few years later, I was going through another very, very difficult time of suffering. And I was walking out of Mass on a Saturday morning. And it was one of those days where, I was always in Mass. I'd lost so much weight. I was, you could see I was really going through something. And I hear somebody call my name, and it's just like, just leave me alone. I want to go home and cry. And it's just an acquaintance. And she said, Allison, I want to give you this book. It was so helpful to me. And it had all these page markers. And I'll tell you about it. I know we're hitting a break. But I took it. I knew God was talking to me with this book. So I took it. I went to the beach and I sat for 4 hours. And it was so pivotal and so life-changing.
Wow. Well, that's a great way to keep people around through the break for sure. You got to come back and find out what that book is, what happened next in Allison's life. So powerful what God wants to do for us. He is so good, so loving, and he knows us perfectly. And he knows what we're going through, and he can make meaning out of our sufferings, applying the graces from those sufferings when we bring them to him in powerful ways. I hope you're hearing that in Allison's story. When we get back, you're going to hear more. So stay tuned. We'll be right back on The Simple Truth.
This is Franciscan Media's Saint of the Day for May 4th. Today we celebrate Blessed Michael Giadroich. Born in Vilnius, Lithuania, Michael suffered from physical and permanent handicaps from birth. He was a dwarf who had the use of only one foot. Because of his delicate physical condition, his formal education was frequently interrupted. But over time, Michael showed special skills at metalwork. Working with bronze and silver, he created sacred vessels, including chalices. He traveled to Krakow, Poland, where he joined the Augustinians. He received permission to live the life of a hermit in a cell adjoining the monastery. There, Michael spent his days in prayer, fasted and abstained from all meat, and lived to old age. Though he knew the meaning of suffering throughout his life, his rich spiritual life brought him consolation. Michael's long life ended in Krakow in 1485. 500 years later, Pope John Paul II visited that city and spoke to the faculty of the Pontifical Academy of Theology. Among those the Pope cited when he referred to the 15th century as the century of saints was Blessed Michael Giadroich. There's more about the saints along with inspiration and Catholic resources at our website, saintoftheday.org. From Franciscan Media, this has been Saint of the Day.
With the unquestionably high divorce rate in our country, it comes as a real surprise when people hear that couples who use natural family planning in their marriages have a less than 5% divorce rate. Their marriages tend to be stronger due to improved communication skills that enhance marital intimacy. For information on how you and your spouse can learn natural family planning, see the Couple to Couple League website at www.ccli.org or call 513-471-2000 for classes near you.
Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here. Testimony Tuesday. Our guest, Allison Ricciardi. She is founder and president of CatholicTherapist.com, also director of the Raphael Remedy, theraphaelremedy.com. And Allison, before we get back, I just want to let people know as well, Allison's experience in the pro-life movement and pro-life work, so important to think through and discern your calling when we do still have this ongoing holocaust of abortion. And so I do want to encourage people, you can check out lovewillendchildkilling.com. Lots of good resources there, but one in particular I want to point people to if you're hurting after abortion as a mom or a father or a sibling who's been impacted by abortion, or a grandparent who's been impacted by abortion, or a friend. There is healing available, great resources, great people available to help you in that healing process. You can go to the healing tab. If you go to lovewillendchildkilling.com, click on that healing tab at the top of the page, and there's a whole list of resources there for you. So Allison, where we left off, you're on the beach with the book for 4 hours. Tell us more.
Oh my! It was just pivotal. It was for those who can see this book. Wow. I Believe in Love.
Yes.
And it's a spiritual retreat based on the teachings of Saint Therese, the Little Flower. Now, it's interesting because before that, everybody I know was praying to Saint Therese, and every time I did, I got nothing. But I think I just didn't know her. And this book it was all about having unshakable confidence in God. And looking at how God works in our lives. He always, always, always brings good, no matter what it is, no matter what evil. And you just mentioned, all these people who've been hurt and impacted by abortion. Over the years, I've seen so many women that, had it not been for that tragedy, maybe never would have known Jesus. So it's so important that we recognize that even in that tragedy, even that, objective moral evil, God always intends to bring good. He won't allow an evil unless he has a greater good he's going to bring from it. And we think about, the worst evil ever was killing God on a cross, right? Greatest thing that ever happened was Jesus dying for us on the cross. So I think when we have that perspective, it makes such a big difference. So in this book, abandonment to Jesus, really trusting him. And if we think back to original sin, the original sin of Adam and Eve was not trusting God. That's basically the thing that we all struggle with. And obviously the devil's always there to kind of point out the failures, the evil in the world, that he's responsible for, and he blames on God. But when we switch our perspective, we start to really learn how to trust, to abandon ourselves to him. So after reading this book, it really started to change the way I looked at things. I just, decided to just be grateful for everything that I did have. And I was really blessed. I had so many good friends. I had a lot of male friends too, which I think was a real blessing along the way. I mean, I did date a lot. It wasn't for lack of trying, but it just never seemed to work out. But I think, and I see this with a lot of people, that, they're on this quest to get married, and they kind of toss everybody else aside. We only need one, right? But there are a lot of good people out there. And for me, growing up, I didn't have any brothers. I didn't understand men. I didn't get it. And having male friends to give me that perspective was really, really important and really, really helpful to me. So I think it was about 2010, a couple of my friends decided they were going on a pilgrimage to Medjugorje, and they wanted me to go. And now, think back, I didn't want to go to the Bronx. I didn't want to travel. I don't like to travel. So I thought about it, and I wasn't even sure if I believed in Medjugorje at that point. So I was like, all right, you know what? Let me pray about it. And everything seemed to line up that I was supposed to go. So that was it. I said, all right, you know what? Lord, either take this desire out of my heart or answer it. I'm willing to go halfway across the world. And while I was there, I saw no miracles. I didn't see the sun spin. Nothing. But it was just it was also 105 degrees and brutal. Climbing mountains is just totally outside my comfort zone. I see all these Italian pilgrims going up barefoot. I'm thinking, all right, God knows I am way outside my zone here. I'm going to do the best I can. And one thing that the tour guide Malaka said, she said, when you look at this mountain, you don't think you can do it. And it's like if you saw all the challenges in your life, you wouldn't think you can do it. But if you take one stone at a time, you could do it. And I thought, wow, that was real. It was such a really profound, simple lesson there. So as I took one stone at a time, every now and then I would see like an easier way if you went to the right or to the left. And even though there were other people doing it barefoot and suffering as much as they could, the lesson for me was that whatever blessings God's willing to give you, take advantage of them. They're gifts. So it was really just a simple and profound experience. Now, we stayed at the home of Ivan, one of the visionaries in Medjugorje, and we were very blessed to be in the chapel with him every day when he had his apparition. So toward the end of the trip, we each had an opportunity to sit down and tell him, what our prayer intentions are and ask him to pray for us. So the girl who went before me was outside in the garden, and she's there, and they're having this animated conversation. So, now I think I was 50 at the time, or 51. So I told him all my intentions. I'm going to pour my heart out, like this is my heart's desire. And, she had this great conversation. So I'm thinking he's going to give me some words of wisdom. And he just went like this, okay. And I just thought, that's it. And I really didn't give it another thought. I just thought, if this is God's will, it's going to happen. If not, just give me peace with it. I was fine. And I'd actually just broken up with somebody. He was a really nice guy, just wasn't the right one. And at that point, before that, I had made the decision just to be happy with everything I had, be grateful for all the friends that I had. And, even though that didn't work out, that was it. So when I got home, I wound up meeting my husband 4 months later. And I will tell you that if God makes you wait, he doesn't disappoint you. It's just, I look at it and I just don't, I'm overwhelmed with just the goodness of God. That there was a lot of suffering. Obviously, I never got to have kids, but I have 2 wonderful stepchildren. I was very, very close with my 2 nieces as they were growing up, and my sister went through a divorce, so it was really important that I be there. And if I had my own family, I couldn't have been there in that same way. And, my godson and his sister who live 3 blocks away, and I have other godchildren. So, we have to look and see God's blessings and not have our preconceived notions of the perfect. Of what it should be. Now, that deep desire in my heart, I do believe, and I did believe back then, that was what God put on my heart, that was my vocation to be married. But I needed to just trust him, and I needed to go through the things I went through. And even though that was a heartbreak for me, I know when I first got married, whenever I would see somebody having a baby or a newborn baby, I would cry because I didn't get to have that. And yet, God has given me such a beautiful life and just blessed me beyond anything I could have even imagined. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that because it was exactly what I always imagined. It was always what I pictured and what I held out for, because I knew the kind of person that I needed in my life. And I couldn't ask for a better husband. So, God was working, but I will warn you, I was praying for patience, and if you pray for patience, God will make you wait for everything, because that's how you build patience, right? It's like if I want muscles, I got to work out, right? So, God is so good, and we just have to really recognize that, and also do whatever He puts before us at that moment.
Yeah, so powerful. Yeah, I'm trying to find the citation real quick, the quote in the Catechism of the Catholic Church. I know it's there. I've been reading it recently, actually. I can't find it right now, but I think it's somewhere under the 6th commandment where it's talking about marriage, talking about the gift of spouses, and it's talking about the pain of infertility. And it has this great description of explaining how in this time, in that suffering of infertility, how, or I guess in this case, it would not be infertility, but it would be, this desire for the vocation to be a wife and to have children, and for that not being fulfilled, similar in a certain way. And so in that time, though, it talks about the fruitfulness that is there if one turns to the Lord, if one receives God's grace on that, rather than turning away from Him, and how, the opportunities there to be, to enter into sort of a spiritual motherhood, this fruitfulness that can still flow from one, even in those times. I mean, it seems like your work has been tremendously prolific and important and fruitful. So what about that in these times? How did you see great fruitfulness in other ways?
Well, I definitely saw, again, that need for intense healing in the world. And that I think, like I said, going back to the world's first love, how each of us, I mean, men and women in different ways, but the essence of femininity is that receptivity, And, I follow the work of Dr. Conrad Bars. I was very blessed to be introduced to that. And Dr. Bars really talked about authentic affirmation, of being fully present to someone, allowing our hearts to be moved and reflecting it back to them in a way that they can feel. And that's very much a part of what I always did in therapy, but what we also need to do in life. I mean, whoever you encounter, especially now, the world is suffering. There's so much suffering. And everybody that we know is carrying some sort of a cross. And simply being present, listening, loving, I think people can sense when that love is coming from your heart, even without words. And I think it's so important. But, love is perfected in suffering. Fulton Sheen, back to when I was listening to him years ago, he said, if you good people are looking for counsel, there are only two types of people to go to: those who have suffered in union with the cross, and holy people. And you usually don't get holy unless you suffered in union with the cross, So I think that's like so pivotal, And in the world right now, we're really faced with this New Age message of, just kind of like doing it on our own. The God is this kind of diffuse idea that's out there. And I think it's so important that we have that personal relationship. And again, I'm very thankful to Aunt Marion, because she focused on that personal relationship with Jesus, as a lot of evangelicals do. And I think we as Catholics need to do that, because we have to have that personal relationship. Now, of course, in the Eucharist, in adoration, you couldn't get more intimate and personal than that. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't really understand it, and a lot of us sit back, and the church should do this and the church should do that, and we're the church. We have to do it. We have to get the word out there. We have to teach the faith in whatever way we can. So I've looked at therapy, certainly blogging, my YouTube channel also, as ways of like kind of really making the faith relevant, teaching the truths of the faith, because that's ultimately what's going to change the world. That's ultimately what's going to set us free. We hear a lot now about, Luisa Picaretta and living in the divine will. And, it's interesting if we look at, all the problems people have, what is it? It's willfulness. Especially when you see couples, having, arguments and stuff. She wants this, he wants that. Funny story with my Aunt Marion once. She was saying, again, she was, evangelical. And she was telling me they had moved to Florida, and another couple, the wife wanted to move to Florida and the husband didn't. And my aunt said to her, well, if that's what you really want, just pray and Jesus will do that for you. And I said, well, can't Uncle Bill be saying the same thing to her husband? We have to say, God, what do you want? So we listen to what our spouse wants, and not that we always have to give in, but what does God want? Because He sees all the pitfalls, He sees all the benefits down the road, and I thank God for a lot of unanswered prayers with people that maybe I wanted to marry in the past, because it would not have been the right person for me, even though there was heartache and even though there was struggle and stuff like that. When we kind of yield to God and just say, all right, your will be done. He knows better than us. I mean, He loves us better than we love ourselves. We forget that.
Yeah, praise Jesus. And a few resources that Allison has mentioned I want to make sure to highlight here. So certainly the book by Fulton Sheen, Venerable Fulton Sheen now, The World's First Love. Also, I Believe in Love is a tremendous resource that's also been very impactful in my life as well. I Believe in Love, a personal retreat based on the teaching of St. Therese. And also, I want to also point out, yes, Dr. Conrad Barr is a Catholic psychiatrist. Here's a great book that was instrumental for me, came to me at the right time. It's called Born Only Once, The Miracle of Affirmation. Also a great resource. We'll be right back on The Simple Truth. Stay tuned.
Prayer to Saint Michael. O glorious Prince of the heavenly host, Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in the battle and in the fearful warfare that we are waging against the principalities and powers, against the rulers of this world of darkness, against the evil spirits. Come thou to the assistance of men, whom Almighty God created immortal, making them in his own image and likeness and redeeming them at a great price from the tyranny of Satan. Fight this day the battle of the Lord with thy legions of holy angels, even as of old thou did fight against Lucifer, the leader of the proud spirits, and all his rebel angels, who were powerless to stand against thee. Neither was their place found any more in heaven. And that apostate angel transformed into an angel of darkness, who still creeps about the earth to encompass our ruin, was cast headlong into the abyss together with his followers. But behold, that first enemy of mankind, and a murderer from the beginning, has regained his confidence. Changing himself into an angel of light, he goes about with the whole multitude of the wicked spirits to invade the earth and blot out the name of God and his Christ, to plunder, to slay, and to consign to eternal damnation the souls that have been destined for a crown of everlasting life. This wicked serpent, like an unclean torrent, pours into men of depraved minds and corrupt hearts the poison of his malice, the spirit of lying, impiety, and blasphemy, and the deadly breath of impurity, and every form of vice and iniquity. These crafty enemies of mankind have filled to overflowing with gall and wormwood the church, which is the bride of the Lamb without spot. They have laid profane hands upon her most sacred treasures. Make haste, therefore, O invincible Prince, to help the people of God against the inroads of the lost spirits, and grant us the victory. Amen.
Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here. Our guest today on this Testimony Tuesday is Allison Ricciardi. She is founder and president of CatholicTherapists.com, also director of the Raphael Remedy, theraphaelremedy.com, and also launching CatholicLifeCoaches.com soon. You can go there right now, though, and pre-register for some more information on that. Also has a great YouTube channel with short videos on very interesting topics that I think you will find helpful. So you can check that out as well. And remember those 2 free resources that are being offered by Allison as well. If you go to CatholicTherapist.com, you can get the What Every Catholic Should Know Before Starting Therapy resource. That's free. And then also the free ebook at the RaphaelRemedy.com, 8 Keys to Emotional and Spiritual Freedom. That is available when you sign up on the mailing list there. So some great resources. As you can tell, if you've been listening to this episode, you know Allison is a valuable gift to the church and to the world, and this work that she has done is just incredible through CatholicTherapist.com. Also through these other channels that she's getting information out there. It is hard to find great, authentic Catholic information about the deeper movements that are going on in people's lives, in their inner lives, in their emotions, in their psychology, all of these things. And so a great gift that Allison Ricciardi is. And so it's tremendous to have you with us, Allison. Anywhere you want to go in this final segment, feel free. The floor is yours.
Well, a couple of things. As far as like, what you're saying about being a gift and stuff like that, again, I'm very reluctant. I just did because I, was supposed to be done, and then I just wanted to get married and have kids. So it wasn't like I had any lofty goals or any kind of real holy intentions or anything like that. It was something that really needed to be done. And the people that I have listed on Catholic Therapists are really what make it so amazing, is that the, really dedicated Catholic professionals that I've been so impressed over the years with that. But I want to go back to what you were talking about with Dr. Conrad Bars, because that was really another pivotal piece for me. And if you've ever heard Dr. Conrad Bars' story, he was ready to walk away from the field of psychiatry because he felt he wasn't healing anybody. And he read Dr. Anna Terua's work on this affirmation, the need for authentic affirmation. And if we look at our culture right now, even with all the kind of virtue signaling that's going on with everything, with COVID and stuff like that, everybody wants to be part of something bigger than themselves, and they want to feel that their life has some kind of meaning. And so many people have not received what they've needed. Parents are extremely busy these days. A lot of children grow up in homes with addictions or broken homes, and even with the best of intentions, if parents didn't receive it themselves, it's hard for them to give it to their children. So it's a big mess that we find ourselves in, and it really is this one-on-one movement of being present to other people, and particularly now, because I think people are so isolated and so hurting, and just really have been so dehumanized behind the masks. And we need to be smiling at people. We need to be present to people. We need to just let people know, I see you and I delight in you. Especially children. It isn't really a hard formula. Just delight in them. Let people know that you care about them and that you find something good about them. So important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is powerful. And any advice for anybody who, I remember in this book, Born Only Once, The Miracle of Affirmation by Dr. Conrad Bars, how, it was talking about, yes, how if you have not received it, you cannot hand it on, you cannot give it. So what about somebody who might feel like they have that deprivation themselves of this miracle of affirmation, which is which can only come from another person, according to Dr. Bars, that is really affirming you, affirming your value. And certainly we have the affirmation that's coming from God himself. Jesus came to affirm us very clearly, and we have him. He is still with us, resurrected and with us. But at the same time, there is something from that human connection, a human being that we can see in the flesh right now with us, who values us, where we can receive this gift of affirmation. Where would somebody turn if they're looking for a little bit more on this, if they're feeling that they maybe have not received that and they're therefore sort of not equipped to be able to hand that on?
Right. Well, certainly therapy can be very helpful. There are therapists that are doing affirmation therapy, and there are therapists who are naturally affirming people. Definitely spend time in front of the Blessed Sacrament. Even though, you may not see Jesus directly, he is a person who is totally present to you. Mm-hmm. So I think that is so key. I remember somebody years ago who was struggling with something, and he had actually left the Catholic Church, was going to an evangelical church, and I said, just go sit in front of the Blessed Sacrament. And a couple of weeks later he came in, and it just opened everything up. He was able to talk to his wife about what he'd been struggling with, and she was accepting, and it was such a beautiful, beautiful thing. Born Only Once is a really important book because he does talk about the things we need to stop doing, because sometimes we're so busy performing, trying to get people to like us, always, not really showing how we really feel about stuff. So even though somebody may like us, we feel like they don't really know us. So we need to learn how to be ourselves, to say what we're feeling. And I know that's really hard when somebody's unaffirmed. To stop, accepting pseudo affirmation, like jumping in bed with, with everybody who will give you, because that feels like love, but it's really not, so certain things, try, I think, Facebook and all of these social media has really worked against it, because it's so pseudo-affirming to put yourself out there. I know for a lot of young people, it's very depressing, because you look at these pages and it looks like everybody's so happy, and it's just what they're putting out there, so avoid stuff like that that's going to only make you feel bad about yourself. And look at, just spend the time asking God to show you what's right with you. And that's what I love about affirmation therapy. In most cases, you go to therapy to find out what's wrong with you, and affirmation therapy is helping you to see what's right with you. The beauty of who you are, the gifts that God gave you. Everybody has a purpose. Nobody is a mistake. Nobody was an accident. And I know it's very tragic sometimes when your parents will say, well, you were an accident. No, not in God's view. Maybe your parents think that, but not in God's view. So really working on that relationship with God and identifying what an affirming person looks like. Because sometimes we want to be with the popular person, but not really that affirming, right? Anybody who's seen the movie A Christmas Story, the mom in A Christmas Story is like the perfect affirming mom. There was that scene after Ralphie gets into the fight and then his brother is afraid that Daddy's going to kill Ralphie, and he's hiding under the kitchen sink. And she says, Daddy's not going to kill Ralphie. And he's very upset. So she asks him if he wants to come out of there, and he says no. She says, okay, do you want some milk? He said yes. So she gave him the milk, closed the door, and let him stay in there. And it's the perfect example of affirmation, that we can't force people to feel things. Just love them where they're at. Especially allow children to have their feelings. I hate when people say, you shouldn't feel that way. Well, I do. Give me new information so I might feel differently. But I think allowing yourself to accept what your feelings are and finding the people who will simply listen and help you to see what's right with you instead of always pointing out what's wrong with you. And I think that's where that comes from a lot when we have very critical parents or a culture that's always telling us what's wrong. We have to, it's a battle. But Born Only Once, definitely order that book. That's one of the greatest books I think ever written in terms of people who are struggling with affirmation. It's life-changing for so many people.
Sure, yeah, very, very helpful. And any final message that you have to share with us today?
Yeah, trust God. Trust God. I know it's not easy, and it's something you have to make a decision to do. Make a decision to be happy. And then real happiness will follow, because otherwise, we want things on our terms. I'm going to do a video on, to be happily married. Don't get married till you're happy. We have to be happy in who we are. And, sometimes it's the little things. It's the great cup of coffee in the morning, or the beautiful weather, or the things that we do have. If we're very mindful of our blessings, we're going to be a lot happier. So I think just make that decision. I know that was pivotal in my life. I just decided to be happy no matter what. And then everything kind of turned around.
Great place to end it. Allison Ricciardi, thank you so much for being with us today. Great blessing to have you with us. Yeah, thank you so much. And we'll be back on The Simple Truth tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern. Tune in. Until then, God bless you.
As the inspired word of